Welcome to Best in Faction.
The competitive Warhammer 40K podcast.
I'm Colin.
I'm Mitch.
And we are here for episode 102. Oh, and we also have Chuck. You didn't say your name this time.
I tried. Just like, no.
Okay. Well, I like to talk over people. That's part of my charm. All right. So we have a fun episode in front of us, I think. I hope so, at least. That's the plan. Hopefully everyone can hear us fantastically because we are this is different tech than we normally have, but I'm optimistic. So the meta got weird, guys, like real weird, like real weird. But before we talk about that, let's talk about what's going on with everybody. So what's going on with you, Chuck? What's new with you?
Not a lot of 40K. There's a lot of family. There's a lot of other responsibilities. But in addition to that, I have been finishing painting up Custodes. We have a tournament next weekend. So I in fact, have the last two guys out there on the porch drying from their varnish.
So like a good 17 minutes
ready.
of today will be spent painting those two guys?
No, they're done. I don't have to worry about anything else on them.
Okay.
So today should be should be good.
And earlier this weekend, your mom fell over and you spent the whole day at the ER.
Yeah. 11 hours. It's pretty good.
Someone says, dude, like one of my favorite movie quotes, and I make so many movie quotes that I literally don't know what he's talking about.
That's just how we talk now. It's not movie quotes.
Mitch, did I quote a movie at some point?
I mean, I'm sure you did, but everything's been committed to film at this point. We're all just living movie quote machines at this point.
We've got a good friend Jason who came out for Charity Hammer to help us, and then ended up moving to the area. And he's I think very close to Chuck in age. I think a few years older than Chuck, and so he's got all the same pop culture references. And I just say things and don't remember where they're from. And Jason always says, "I like how you just quote things all the time that live rent free in my brain." Like I just don't I watched The Matrix with the kids the other day, the first one, and they hadn't seen it. Well, we watched the first one and then a YouTube video about what happened in the second and third one, and then watched the fourth one, which the real answer for the children would have been to watch the first one and then ignore anything else. But we were watching the first Matrix movie, and there were several things in it that are quoted that I had no memory were from the Matrix that I just say all the time. So yeah.
My favorite version of that is when you watch an older movie and you go, "Oh, that's where that comes from."
Yeah. A friend of mine tried to show his kids Wayne's World, and they're like, "This is really lame, Dad." And he's like, "You don't understand. All of these things are being said for the first time. This is the historical documents."
Yeah, like this is how it happened.
And they're like, "No one cared, just like you didn't care when you were a kid either."
Yeah, exactly right. So, Mitch, what's been going on with you?
Oh man, mainly just same as Chuck in a lot of ways. A lot of real life, a lot of family stuff. A lot of just trying to. February hit hard. It was like got back from LVO.
It was a jerk.
Yeah, and the LVO hangover of just like, man, I just did like never stopped for like 4.5 days. Now I need to rest. But that wasn't an option. So it's been a lot of that, a lot of theory hammer for what the new Imperium hybrid will be for the meta, which we'll be talking about a bit later. And I'm very excited about kind of how different the tools that are available for Imperial players. If you just like to play Imperium as a general faction, there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do right now that hasn't really been possible before.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm excited for us to talk about that. I'll admit that I only heard half of what Mitch said because someone pointed out that Wayne's World just turned 30 years old, and I felt so old suddenly that like I was like the guy in Lord of the Rings that's still shriveled up, and the bad guy's whispering into his ear. That's what happened to me. Just
you aged so much, you lost your hearing. That's
exactly.
That's part of it.
Exactly. What's going on with me? Well, I'm doing some projects. I have handed off painting of my 40K armies to another person who's being paid to do it. That's a new thing. Like trying to get all these projects going has been a thing. So I guess the best update for me would be to give you guys an update on the network. So why don't we do that? I'll give you guys an update on what's going on with Best in Tabletop. And then we will talk about the meta. What we're going to do is Chuck has been playing Custodes. He's going to talk about Custodes. I've been playing with Mitch, obviously, the Imperium expert. I am going to talk about Genestealer Cult and Drukari, both of which I've played recently. And then we're all going to talk about Tau, which is pretty early. But that's going to be what we do today. And then after that, we're going to take a pretty extensive lightning round. So if you have questions for us that you've always wanted to ask us and you're in the chat right now, feel free to ask. So let's start with the Best in Tabletop Network update. We're like a month in, I think, which is crazy. Maybe 3 weeks in, but we're in there now. We have passed 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, which means that we get all of the partner features that I was waiting for. So that's going to let us release a bunch of new content. So if you've already subscribed to our YouTube, thank you. If you've not yet, how many people are subscribed on YouTube literally determines if we get advanced copies of 40K stuff. Among other things, if you want us to review codexes right when they come out, you need to subscribe to our YouTube. You will find it at youtube.com/c/best in tabletop, or just go to YouTube and search for Best in Tabletop and subscribe. Okay. So we're off and running. We've had 3 episodes of several of the new shows. The 40K Fight Club guys, I think, have settled into being, I think, one of the best analyst podcasts out there. The level of math they're going into, the way they're talking about stats in a way that's super digestible. And then listening to Ennis and Anthony, who are both incredibly top tier players, listening to them talk about how all the lists go into each other has just been, I've really gotten a lot out of that. So if you haven't listened to 40K Fight Club yet, it is live every Tuesday at 4 o'clock Pacific, and it hits the podcast stream on Wednesday. Then the other show that's been going for 3 episodes already is the spinoff of the youngins of our show, the Best in Tabletop, the Best in Faction, the Next Generation. And man, talk about enthusiasm. I don't know which of those shows, Chuck, has more enthusiasm between Fight Club and 40K.
Let's just not let them touch.
What's that?
They shouldn't be in the same place at the same time. That could go.
It's a lot of hype.
Could be too much.
It's a lot of hype.
I'm pretty sure if we can get all of them together in 2 pods, and then we put Adam Camilleri in between them, the exchange of hype that will go in between will just be like them shedding electrons. We can actually generate.
Is that how we'll fix the energy crisis, bitch?
No, it's how we'll fix the meta. It'll be with a fusion.
It'll just explode.
Yeah.
And everyone will be left dead? I'm confused how this fixes the
meta.
We'll all be
problems.
left hyped. Permanent hype. It's just
there'll be
no more
problems.
game. We're just always excited about the next thing that never disappoints us because it's always too much hype.
Exactly right. So that is Best in Faction, the Next Generation, which is every Saturday morning, unless they're at a GT, at 10 a.m. Pacific. That one hits the podcast stream Sunday, Monday-ish. And by the way, we decided to put all of the 40K content in the same podcast stream. So if you are already getting us, you're already getting the other shows. And we also have the Outward Realms podcast going, which if you look for Best in Tabletop Expanded, you will find the non-40K podcast content. We have a Outward Realms show there now. There's going to be some generic shows about tabletop gaming that are not 40K specific over there. And there's also going to be an MCP show pretty soon. I have 2 of the 3 hosts I want to have do that show. The problem is that they want me to be the 3rd, and I don't want to commit to that. So we have to figure that out. So those are the shows that are going right now. And by the way, Michael is really good at talking about Outward Realms. If you have any interest in Outward Realms at all, you should definitely listen to the Outward Realms podcast. Make sure to subscribe to it. Everything will be linked all together. It'll be easy to find it. So we have 3. We have 3? Yeah, we have 3 new shows coming. And I know I talked about some shows before that haven't happened yet. Some things have taken longer than expected. Shocking, right? So the first show that's new is coming up on probably Thursday is when we'll release this, but not this Thursday, probably the next Thursday. We've decided that the Fight Club guys are doing such a good job of combining the Europe and American coverage. And so Americans are getting to hear about Europe. Europe is already hearing about Americans, but they're hearing about them there as well. And we've got a bunch of really, really sharp, articulate, high energy young guys who are super from Australia and New Zealand, who are super hype about 40K. And they asked me, can we do a Fight Club that's for APAC, basically. So that's for Australia, New Zealand, and Asia. 100% yes. We won't do that show as often because that audience is not as big, but I think we're going to do that show every other week. And we're not going to do it live, I don't think. They might decide to do it live, but we're not going to do it live because of time zones. Most of our audience won't be available to watch it live. But they're going to record it. We're going to put it out on the podcast stream. And they're going to not focus as much on the math as Fight Club does, but they are talking about doing weird meta analysis where they interview people from middle of nowhere metas about what 40K is like there. We have a guy from the podcast that's moving to Korea, and he's going to do coverage of the Korean 40K meta, which is growing quickly. So we're going to get to look around the world, and that's going to be super, super cool. So that show is going to come out in the next few weeks. That is going to come out every other week, and opposite it will be what's going to be called Lore and Peace. And I just had confirmation this weekend that the Falcon is going to do that. He's had a lot going on in his personal life. We'll just leave it at that. And he wasn't sure he had time. He would very much like to. So Taylor, as you guys know him, and the Falcon will be doing a lore show, and it will release in the podcast stream every other week, opposite of 40K Fight Club Down Under or whatever it ends up being called. So both those shows are coming out. Finally, I have decided what I want to start doing. I want to make more content, but I wanted to do it in a particular way that was exciting for me. And so I released a short story of me talking about kind of my career and how I ended up at where I'm at right now, making Best in Tabletop. And I released that video on YouTube, and people are really enjoying it. And that video says Chasing the Narrative on it. That's actually kind of a tech pilot for my new show, which is called Chasing the Narrative. My favorite thing, one of my favorite things in the whole world is getting to know people. I really like doing it, and I love stories. I like how stories are built. I like how they're structured. I like telling stories. I like hearing stories. I love stories. So what I'm doing is I'm going to release a podcast show. It's not going to be a YouTube show. It's not going to be a podcast, and it's going to be in two parts. And the first part is going to be me interviewing a high-level name from the meta, and we're not going to talk very much about 40K. We're going to talk about how they grew up and how they got into 40K and what's interesting from their life and what traveling is like for 40K. If they're professional for 40K, like the Art of War guys, we'll ask what that's like. Stories about the Art of War House. We're going to talk about these people's lives and get to know them. And I think it's going to be funny and lighthearted, and it's going to have, I hope, a Ted Lasso vibe of everything's going to work out and everything's going to be good. Then there's going to be a second part that's going to be behind the YouTube paywall. I'm sorry. We're making so much content. Some of it is going to be behind a YouTube paywall. I'm actually not sorry. We're making so much content. I would like to be able to pay the people making the content. As a side note, we're working under the premise that this is a business and everyone has to be paid. All of the people doing podcasts, everybody editing, everybody posting, all the people doing marketing. So we're building an actual thing here. So anyways, some content, not all of it, lots of content will be free. Some content will be behind the paywall. And the second half of each week of Chasing the Narrative will be behind the paywall. And the second half of Chasing the Narrative is literally me picking a bizarre topic that the guest is excited about and seeing how much I can learn about it. The first episode is going to be Anthony Vanilla. And if you've ever wanted to hear Colin try to understand why people would choose a hobby where they get punched in the face, you will want to listen to that, because I'm going to ask the real questions. Like, do you like punching people in the face more than you like getting hit in the face by enough of a ratio that it makes MMA make sense? So that's going to be part 2 of my interview with Anthony Vanilla, which will be our first episode. I'm interviewing him today. It should be out in the next couple of days. I'm actually going to try to release 2 episodes of Chasing the Narrative a week for a little while, and then I'll probably settle into 1. I just have a lot of people ready to interview, and I want to get off to a start. So that's what's going on for me. I'll also be helping Mitch get organized, because we're getting down to it now, and it's time to start doing Codex reviews pretty quick here. We're almost to a month from Custodes, I think, Mitch.
Yep.
We are in a month from Genestealer Cult.
Yep. Yeah, it's just finding the time right now. But other than that, I'm really excited for going over the internal balances of each codex. And also, I feel like the thing that no one is talking about with Custodes is how great an ally they are. Yes, you give up your fight stances, but they bring something to any army that you like, so many other tools that the toolboxes you can create just in the by adding in other Imperial factions, whether it's Guard, AdMech, Sisters. Like there's a lot of different things you can do that create immensely flexible toolboxes. So that's going to be really cool to experiment with and explain.
I was a little disappointed last night, Mitch, that you didn't laugh at my "you got Guard all over your Custodes" comment. To your,
I didn't see it, honestly.
Oh, Chuck,
Yeah.
Mitch sent one of the most Mitch lists ever last night.
Yeah, I saw it.
That was all Guard
We talked about it a little bit last
with
weekend.
Custode bikes. And I said, dude, you got Guard all over your Custodes.
Yeah.
Which is very much how that list looked to me. Like you've really lessened the quality of your Custodes list by
I've got a hard, crunchy outer shell of Custodes with a soft, gooey, indirect Guard center.
Fair enough. It's
And
like it's the nougat.
Yeah, see, little nougat.
A little nougat. Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. So that's what's going on with Best in Tabletop. We are rolling. It's going. We have professional editors making things. The YouTube videos are going up in quality, and there's also a project that Chuck and I are trying involving a battle report, and we're going to try it tomorrow. I'm not going to tell you guys what we're going for because we don't know if it's going to work well. But we are making a battle report that you in a format that I don't believe have seen before. I don't think. Have you seen that format before, Chuck, that we're trying?
No, I don't think so.
No. So we're trying a new thing. You guys may not know this, but sometimes we come up with streaming things and we do them like 80%, and then Art of War and everybody else grabs them and does them 100%. So the least I can do is come up with a new idea and do it a little bit and then get everybody else doing it. It was supposed to be funny. I don't know. I hope it was. So, Charity Hammer really was a lot of how streaming got started so actively, but we don't talk about this. Okay, so that's what's going on with all of us and with the network. Now it's time to talk about the meta. Fight Club will have really great numbers on this, but I'm sorry to report that both Custodes and Tau are well into the 70s for win rate. Custodes is particularly upsetting because it's like 460 games, which is like, I mean,
it's a good data set.
If we were trying to analyze the DNA for a human, that's not enough data. But that's plenty of data. That's a lot of data for 40K games.
What's important is some of those games were at different point values.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, that's very important.
If the points hadn't gone down from there, that might help us justify slightly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And the Custodes book is really strong, and it's hilarious because let's just say this. Y'all, the community, could you guys do me a favor and stop listening to people when they tell you if a book that isn't out yet is going to be good or not? Like that clearly that's not a way we're getting reliable information.
That's not fun.
I was told that GSC would be broken, and then I was told it would be terrible. It's neither of those things. We'll talk about that in a minute. Mm-hmm. I was told by multiple people, including the top Custodes player from last year, that the Custodes Codex was going to be terrible. The Custodes Codex is crazy.
It's almost
and by the way, I think looks incredibly fun, and I'm super jealous of everyone getting to play it.
It's almost like you have to change how you play to get something out of the new books because they're intentionally designed to be different than the previous book. Because if they make something too similar, everyone says, "Well, you're just selling me the same stuff again." But if they make something too different, everyone's like, "Oh, it's not good." It's like, well, no, you have to figure it out because you don't want the thing to be the same all the time.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I remember when the York book was bad. So yeah.
Well, the York book came out and was great, and then was immediately bad. But we were
everybody
told
thought like, "Oh my god, everything we're used to is gone."
Yep.
Oh yeah.
We had to do new things.
And then that's exactly right. Like we thought the Orc book was bad, and then orcs were such a problem that they had to be addressed multiple times.
Yeah. Well, or another great example is how Guard has had Guard players. If you've wanted to be a good Guard player, you've had to change from conscripts to artillery to Bulgrin to like you're constantly adjusting. Like tank commanders, Talon tank commanders were the answer for a while, but then the damage profile is no longer effective enough into the meta, so you have to adjust to something else. Now Tau brings so much indirect into the game, it actually raises up Guard stock because you have to be able to deal with it.
Right. Except
they're still bad.
So far, at least. I believe they said on Fight Club that Guard is actually the worst win rate into Custodes of every faction.
Oh, I don't doubt that at all.
Yeah, what are they going to do to them?
Yeah.
I don't understand how things like mortars help against people with 2-up saves that are
they don't.
T5 and T6.
You put them in between you and that person, and that buys you a turn.
They can sit on objectives. As Cadia, you can make one get +1 AP, +1 to hit, +1 to wound, rerolling all hits, rerolling all wounds. You can like there are things you can do. They exist actually for Eldar and Tau because they kill breachers and reapers and all kinds of other stuff just fine. But the mana cores make it so that you can't hide little pockets of Custodes because Custodes love to have that one guy who just won't die, and you're like, cool, this guy has flat 3 damage, and we're gonna roll 2d6. Okay, cool, he's dead now. Like, does it work every time? No, but it gives you a much more reasonable way to address the problem without having to engage with it because you just cannot engage with Custodes if you're guard.
I think that Tau is going to pick up all of that indirect fire.
It's a go first thing at that point.
No, it's not. All their indirect fire is on vehicles that are not going to die to mortars or mana cores.
We'll see.
Well, I mean, they've got 14 wound vehicles. Like you have to get 5 mana core hits through to kill 1 vehicle. Yep. 5. That's a lot of mana cores. I know. Are they all full payload? Can you do that?
You can do 2 full payload,
and then the other one does D3.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I would love to see this matchup, but even if you go first, I suspect that Tau just obliterates the guard because Tau is crazy for shooting and guard is not.
Well, they have like a whole edition.
Yeah.
Having one more edition
has a new codex, then I mean,
well, and again, you also that's why you layer in 9 Custodes bikes all with the missiles and Trajan and a bike captain, and you put that out in front and you go, cool, if you try to come towards me to engage with my artillery, I am going to kill your vehicles absolutely dead.
Yeah. That does sound fun. Interesting though, Custodes currently are winning more games at Tau than Tau are into Custodes.
I believe that.
So they may not need that help.
Oh, they may not, but I will still do it anyway because that's just.
Well, you can do it because it's fun. I'm just not. I am merely debating you that's actually better than running mono Custodes because I don't think it is.
Well, what it does is the other part of it is it's not just for Tau. Eldar are coming.
Yeah.
Those guns and weapons are incredibly effective at picking up Eldar. And there's also the other option where you get rid of the guard and you throw in an Inquisitor with a bunch of combi Xenos Inquisitor with a bunch of combi plas, and you can make it all untargetable. And you can make the Inquisitor untargetable with a Custodes stratagem. So now he cannot be shot or interacted with in any way, shape, or form. He casts his power re-rolling to cast, and you have 18 combi plas re-rolling all hits and wounds against Xenos that are behind a Custodes shield wall that can't be engaged with. Okay. And you walk into the middle of the board and you're like, hey, so I'm just going to spend a CP every time. He doesn't die.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about so basically what's happened is Custodes came out. They were incredible. They did amazing at LVO, and then most lists received, I think, about 150 points back. Is that about right, Chuck?
Mine's very different, but yeah, I would say what happened mostly is everybody got free Misericordias.
Yes. Free Misericordias. We saw some changes with the Forge World stuff that made so that now the Caladius is appealing again. And then Telemon went down by 20 points.
And the bikes went down by 5, or is it?
I don't know if the bikes went down. They might have gone down by 5. I think so. Yeah, they were 90 before and they're 85 now. That sounds about right.
I think that's the one that made me laugh. I was like, oh yeah. Those definitely needed a little bit of buff.
We saw characters go up a bit, except for Trahan, who also lost 20 points, which is why every time there's a Custodes detachment, I'm like, Trahan goes in.
Yeah, well, because he's amazing.
I have been given an Imperial Demon Prince, and I'm gonna use him.
So Curry says 70 to 90 points per list, not counting free knives. I don't know why we're not counting free knives, but we're not counting them evidently.
Because we wouldn't have taken them if they weren't free.
There's still points. They still were points before. Whatever.
Yeah.
So Custodes went down in points and then started winning everything. And then Tau came out and Tau is winning everything as well. I listen to Fight Club. They talk about it better than us. But just to remind you guys, 75 is massively worse than 70 for win rate. And 70 is massively worse than 65. The problem is that because of the way 40K works, where you're winning and other people are losing, every bit above 50% you go knocks everyone else down below 50%.
Yeah.
And you end up the higher you go, the more you wreck the rest of the meta and make those armies unable to compete. So
well, really, anything that gets into the 60s is a win percentage is like the thing to pay attention
everybody,
to.
the Drukhari, all that
Touching
time
the
that
70s
Drukhari was the top army,
ridiculous.
they were like 64% that whole time. And we were in 70s.
They
for
hit
both.
72 at one point or something. But yeah, it's been up and down. The point is we've become accustomed to having armies that have way too high of a win rate.
Oh, I'm not accustomed to that.
What?
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Mitch.
Well, no, I mean, like, I feel like the conversation isn't. It gets muddled down because it's felt so relentless. Dark Eldar have been good for an entire season. We had and then we had Admech, and and then or the Orc buggy list. It's like there's been spike after spike after spike of power, and and people go, well, it's power creep. It's like it's not power creep because we see lots of factions that get nothing good. Or nothing nearly as good, I should say.
The GSC Codex, with the GSC Codex, as far for all intensive purposes, came out at the same time as Custodes and Tau, basically.
Yep.
And if you compare those 3 books, man, does it feel bad to be a GSC player.
Yep.
If you compare those 3 books, like my cult trait is +1 to charge and +1 strength. Emperor's Chosen, excuse me. We have these 5 things. I don't know. I have these 5 things, and for a CP, we can grab anybody else's thing from any other one. Like, what? So it is. I agree, Mitch. It is certain armies.
Yeah, it's spikes, not curve, right? Like the curve. It's not a curve up. It's just there are these spikes, and the idea is that we have these quarterly updates that are hopefully going to put a ceiling on those spikes. So, not necessarily a ceiling. They're going to shorten how long the duration of them are. Because that's the only way you can really control this at the pace that they're having to release right now. So it's frustrating. We've seen the first passive balances, which was obviously very much targeting Dark Eldar, but it didn't destroy them. There certainly are viable builds for Dark Eldar still. So
not against the S tier, but yes,
not against the S tier, but they didn't get dumpstered like Aberrants.
No. I think they're strongly what we called Pack Plus when we talked about that a year ago.
Yeah.
The idea being they're better than the average list, but they can't hang with the S tier. They can if you're really good. That's not what we mean. We're talking about equal opponents in a fair setting. Drukhari is simply not as good as Custodes and Tau.
Yeah, and that's fine because they were amazing for a year.
It's actually not fine, but it's good. It'll be okay.
Well, again, it's impossible for everyone to be in the exact same tier. There will always be better. The idea is that they are making incremental adjustments that where we see improvements, but we don't see someone's entire army that they just bought because it was really good and they're excited about it invalidated. So seeing Dark Eldar still be Pack Plus is a lot better than what happened again to like Aberrants or like the patented GW triple nerf we used to joke about where something would go just into the ground, and it's like that's not a feel good experience either.
Or Sisters.
Yeah.
So they were clearly an A tier and they needed to be brought down.
Yeah. So well, and that's the thing is this is an entirely new process. I think that they are definitely having some teething issues. I think we saw that.
What's the new process, Mitch?
The quarterly updates.
Okay.
I think that they're having some teething issues. I think they're trying to address too many balancings. You don't need to address everything. Just hit the highest pain points in the meta and start there. Because if you do that, you'll be seen as doing something, and you don't accidentally do something like what happens with like Sisters, where people are like, or Mana Corps is going up 10 points, where it's like that wasn't needed. Like
no, for one of the worst armies in the game right now.
Yeah,
statistically,
yeah. So I think that they're now listening a lot more. So people should be giving them that constructive feedback that, hey, that didn't feel good. I do not enjoy when you guys like my army's already in the lowest part of the game. Why are you nerfing us? We don't need don't touch us if you want. I'd rather be ignored than but
I have a slightly different take on this, but it sounds like Chuck has a thought first.
Go for it.
I was just saying, I think looking at those win percentages and choosing to address armies that are either at the very top or the very bottom is the right path.
Yeah.
And, obviously to lift up the ones at the bottom and push the ones at the top down. I think that there's too much focus on pushing the top down. There's always going to be something broken in 40K. I've been here long enough to tell you that that's just the case. There's a degrees of broken, right? It sounds like Custodes and Tau are out of the bounds right now, but so we're Admic. What's unfortunate about that is not that any one particular army has been doing that, but we've been playing with broken shit for a year now.
Mm-hmm.
The meta has had somebody at the high 60s to 70s win rate the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
We've never had that summer, and I am glad to see them addressing it. But that's not like a favor they're doing us.
No.
That's something they owe us. We bought this, and it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So get your shit together.
That actually segues perfectly into what my point was going to be, Chuck. Yeah. I think that they deserve every compliment in the flippin' world for the quarterly updates. I think they've been really solid so far. I think they've been heavy-handed at times that they didn't need to be, but they've also done a really good job of bringing things in line. Drukhari and Grey Knights, like some like stuff that is still good, but didn't get, nerfed into the ground. As
didn't disappear. Yeah.
Well, my issue is.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
My issue is there is and I'm not going to blame anybody for this. I'm just going to state the way it is. GW has a completely broken Codex writing process that's ridiculously awful. And I think it will get better because I think the quarterly updates are great and they show that they're paying attention and that they're going to try to do better. But in the past year, we had people quit 40K over the fact that you didn't get a game against Drukhari, and then you didn't get a game against Admech, and then you didn't get a game against Orc Buggies, and then you didn't get a game against Grey Knights, and this is what the internet has focused on for a year. And I acknowledge that Double Spear Ynnari was too good, but it was never in the 70s for win rate, and it wasn't easy to play like some of the like Orc Buggies were, right? They're making armies where the rules are so badly written that when the army comes out, there are often lists that everyone can 3D print and play. And that's happening in our meta. People are just stealing IP from GW and just printing their models so they can play whatever the new broken thing is. And I got to tell you, I hate it because I don't want to take Custodes or Tau to the GT next weekend. I don't know if I'm going to get to go. I've got some personal stuff going on. I won't get to know till later in the week, so I haven't signed up yet. But I want to go, and if I go, I'm going to take bugs. But I don't just want to take Alex's LVO list, and I don't want to take Custodes, and I don't want to take Tau. So I'm just going to go to this tournament as one of the best players in the area and say, I guess I'll go 4-1 or 3-2 because Custodes and Tau are released too strong and they're not nerfed yet. That's not okay. We deserve better than that. And I think they could get better, but we need to give them that feedback. Don't bitch about, I don't think we should complain about the quarterly updates. I think we should complain about the codexes that are getting released because they show either that the playtesters don't know what's going on or GW is unwilling to listen to the playtesters. And those are, neither of those situations is good for a long-term healthy game. So I want to be optimistic about this because I think the quarterly updates will help. And I think Eldar will help because Eldar never gets released and isn't broken in like the 20-year history of Eldar. They've never had a book come out and been bad. And so hopefully them and Custodes and Tau will kind of make a meta that other people can make janky things into and adapt to, and we'll get weird stuff. But I don't know that that's the case.
They don't share the same kinds of defense profiles or attack profiles, so there won't be tools that are omni useful across Tau and
I think Tau vehicles and Craftworld Eldar vehicles are very similar. So if that's the direction,
if it turns vehicles, I'm assuming it's Aspect Warriors, but you're right. Yeah, if it's vehicles, then...
well, the leaks make Aspect Warriors look very hard to resist, but they also make things like Wave Serpents very hard to resist. What's that, Mitch?
Eldar got announced today.
Oh, good. So 2 weeks from yesterday, then.
Apparently, yeah, I'm just seeing it in the general chat on our Discord.
Okay, yeah, we've been waiting. We thought there's been so many leaks.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be.
That boat is on the bottom of the ocean. It had so many leaks in it. Like, yeah, I'm surprised they can even get to us with how much that boat has been leaking on its way to us.
Well, it did take its time.
That's true. They were bucketing out the water the whole way.
I think it's really interesting. We're talking about there's this very high tier. Right, this very upper tier of these armies are great. I'm in this weird position where I was building the Custode army because I wanted to collect them all. Right, like this is the last army that I needed to build and collect, and I actually had a moment of like, I'm not going to play this at the tournament because I not very fond of the Emperor and his minions.
Right.
But I'm like, you know what? I have this army. I built it. I'm going to play at some point. Right now is the time. I think this will be the first time in a long time that I've been like on meta, and even then I'm a little off. But at least I'm in the high win tier rate army.
But just as an interesting tangent on that, you didn't want to do the normal hobby work you do to that army.
No. That's I did what I call like the meta chaser army style. I was like, I think I'm at 12 hours worth of work into the army. I'll finish the display board maybe today, probably tomorrow, and I'll reach about 15 hours worth of work on the whole thing.
Yeah,
and that's fine for me.
Pre-orders for Eldari are next week.
Okay. All right.
The fact that you can buy a Custodes army and rattle can it gold and then paint their weapons, and everybody's like, "Oh, that looks painted," like, is really not good for the meta either.
I, as someone who has had to watch orc players for years, just be like, "Oh, this is that thing now." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I guess it's kind of like a helicopter." No, in an easy to do Imperial army is great. Love it.
It is profoundly unfair that how different kit bashing is for the different armies. We've talked about this before, that hobby competitions are inherently faction unfair, as bad as 40k competitive 40k is. It is way easier to win a hobby award with orcs than with Space Marines. It just is.
Sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
And there's a bunch of armies that just, I don't want to see kit bashed. Don't, like, unless you've got some really creative thing to do, like for your Tau, don't kit bash your Tau. They're cool looking, and they've got like flat panels and crisp lines. Like, they don't want to be kit bashed.
Yeah. One of the things I like about Tau is they have that sort of uniform. They feel like a military unit, kind of everybody gets issued the same stuff, like manufacturing and all that stuff. That's core to what their race is, right? So it feels weird to change it.
Exactly. But the problem is that in order to do well at a hobby score, you have to kit bash and make custom models.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like the ITC's version of that, where you can just excel at all other categories. So as long as you have immaculate blends, perfect highlighting, and everything, you can get the top score without having the conversions.
Yep.
At least it isn't perfect, but it's better.
Right. Anywho, so the meta's not good. I think it's the problem is that they don't know how to release books. But that's just my opinion. But I also think it's going to get better. I think we're going to get, it seems to me like they're trying to get every 9th edition Codex we don't have yet out in a hurry. That's what it seems like.
It does.
Because they announced that Tyranids are right after Craft World. And the rumors I had heard is that Tyranids were going to be like late summer. And Craft World is like 2 weeks from now. I don't believe they're going to not release another Codex for 4 months. Like, I don't think that's true at all. So I think they're trying to get us everything we don't have. I know it's supposed to be the year of chaos, so we probably should have chaos rules at some point.
No. Just I welcome our new Genestealer Cult, Tyranid, and Eldar allies into the chaos faction.
They'd still find a way to be bad if they could take those.
I mean, you just said the Genestealer Cult's not that great.
Yeah, it's
welcome to the chaos faction.
It's not bad. Like,
your models have one wound.
Yes.
Then you're an honorary member.
In fact, acolytes are very similar to Chaos Space Marines in their stats because they're
acolytes are significantly cheaper.
What's that?
Yeah, acolytes are significantly cheaper.
It's true. Okay, so let's talk about Custodes. So, Chuck, let's start with you. You've been playing some Custodes. Mm-hmm. What do you think of Custodes so far?
Well, let me tell you about their data sheets. They have high toughness, lots of wounds, good armor, good close combat, and decent shooting.
And a great invul.
Oh, and then, that's part of the armor in my minion, right? Is like, it's this 4-up invul. They're amazing. Like, you just look at the data sheets, you look at the points to wound ratios, all that stuff. Everything looks great. And then you start going into their stratagems, and they have things like Tanglefoot grenades, and they also have all these defensive stratagems to turn off rerolls and stuff. So their durability like doubles down. They have everything. And like, they have speed, they have durability, they have strength. They every part of the triangle of like how you make a unit good shines on them. Mm-hmm. Particularly on the bikes, right? Talking about speed being the one thing that you could be missing if you went like all foot Custodes, even then, if you solar watch and just run at people, you're pretty fast.
Right.
I don't really have a better way of saying it. They have everything that you want in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Every model you have.
They have multiple ways to fall back and charge, multiple ways to fall back and shoot. Like,
your whole army can just
two different interrupts. Yeah. Like, They have every tool you could possibly want.
3
It's
if you
crazy.
have Trajan.
Oh yeah, you could do that.
Yeah, you can do it actually 3 times.
His moment
You interrupt
shackle
3
can
times.
interrupt.
Oh,
Yeah,
That
you can-
requires that your opponent has 3 units charge you at once.
Yep.
For that to even, I guess it really has to be 4 units for it to even be relevant.
Yep.
well, you can't back-to-back interrupt, so I would need
Right.
6 things.
4, because it's like they attack you, then you interrupt, then they attack you,
Oh, I
then
see
you
what you're
interrupt
saying.
again. But
The problem is
you're
that some
not
of the
going to just
things
use
that
the
charge
third
you
one
are
as a
probably going to
flash.
die. Is the issue.
Yeah. Well, the thing is,
Yeah.
oftentimes I find you don't need to interrupt. You just sort of like take it on the shield and then kill them anyway.
Mhm.
Like it's
Yep. No, they are the kings of being like, oh, there's more of me left than you were counting on. Have fun with that.
yeah. Yeah,
Yes,
see,
that's
like,
very well
I felt
put.
a little bit of that with Necrons, right? Where you're just like, oh, well, these 6 destroyers are going to take a lot more than you think to remove them, and if you come even slightly short on dice rolls, it's going to go horribly wrong.
Mhm.
And the whole Custodes army is that,
Yep.
and it moves faster, and it's great.
Everybody's taking 3x3 bikes.
Oh, easy, everybody but me.
Okay.
I think with Tau and Custodes being the 2 things that you have to worry about the most, I buffed my bikes up to 6 and 5.
Okay.
Because if you're taking 3x3 bikes and I have 6 bikes, I get to kill you. Because it's who hits who harder, right? Like, 3 bikes going into Custodes is going to kill a couple. If they do that, then I'll kill them back, and vice versa. Like it's a meta choice. It's a uneducated one.
Well, I think it makes sense to me.
Yeah. And it also means that if I go into Tau, I can launch 6 bikes across the table, and they can have all of the defense buffs.
Yeah.
And then they'll take all of the Tau shooting and then go in and still tag them.
And Tau won't kill them. Right. I think that's actually why Custodes have a better win rate into Tau than Tau into Custodes do so far.
No, yeah.
Also, like, Tau is brand new, and we need to appreciate that. Like the Tau lists, like there's a lot of variety in Tau lists right now. So like we don't know what Tau's going to end up. So it could be that Tau is a better book than Custodes, and we just haven't seen it yet. But what we're seeing so far is that Custodes are winning more games than Tau are in that matchup. And I think it's because Custodes can send a big beefy thing down the table and just roll well. Yeah. Turn off rerolls, like transhuman it, and it's just like, okay, if this thing doesn't die, you didn't do enough to me this turn.
Well, if you don't have a big thing,
you, and you don't like that.
If you don't have a big thing, I think you can just absolutely just run your entire MSU army inside a -1 to hit bubble up the table, and be like, this will be fine. Because it's hard for them to focus their marker lights. It's hard for them to figure out their order of operations. It's because there's a lot of yield there for making mistakes.
Right.
I think, in really in any scenario, Custodes are tough enough to actually to rush them. Because the Tau really want to sort of fake you or kite you into scenarios and then leave and kind of play that game back and forth. And the Custodes are too quick for it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So what do you think are Custodes' weaknesses from playing so far?
Really trying to get good secondaries into the list. I do think when you're making a Custodes list, you need to really figure out 2. I think it's acceptable to have a third that's based on basically tabling your opponent in some fashion, right? Like if you even taking Assassinate is acceptable, but if you don't have 2 built into the list to start, I think you're going to possibly destroy your opponent. And if they're wily, if they can come in behind you or get past you and touch objectives and stuff, they will keep up on primary and beat you on secondary. So you have to have a good, strong core. Otherwise, you will destroy them while you lose the mission.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, they seem to be weak to Shadow Keepers, which is just another kind of Custode.
Right. They're not. John Lennon pointed this out to me. They're not actually great at secondaries.
No, not at all. You have to really think it through.
Yeah, and so that's what you need to do when you go into Custodes. You need to think about your secondaries and their secondaries, because in the new missions, often you just get full primary in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the new secondaries, you need to think about, what do I take against Custodes and what are they going to take? And can I outscore them by 3 while I die? Right? Like, like a lot of armies are just going to get tabled by Custodes, but you might be able to get, like, I wonder if armies like Lucas's Orc Rush can get points fast enough that the Custodes can't kill them quick enough. I don't know. I'm just I wonder about that.
We might find out this weekend.
He's
I
not
don't
going to
know
be
if
there.
It's not going to be there. All right, that's
No.
too bad.
Yeah.
I think theoretically, orcs have a very good game into Custodes once they adjust meta-wise.
Okay.
Because Custodes don't have any damage reduction, and a lot of their power is turning off rerolls. Orcs
Yeah.
just ignore a ton of what they've got.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is getting enough AP to put them on their invulns, and then still getting enough damage in one go that it matters.
Yeah.
Because you can send a competent combat unit and a character in every turn, fight with the combat unit. If he interrupts, kills your character, you spend the CP, they fight on death. Repeat. And so you
Right.
can kind of keep up with the damage. The question is, what happens if one of those points fails at some point?
Mm-hmm.
And with 4-up invulns, that's going to happen.
Yep. One way to look at that. So I had a game against Emperor's Chosen yesterday, and I was playing Mono GSC. And on the second turn, I shot and killed 3 Sagittarium, the heavy bolter guys.
Yeah.
Okay. Shot and killed 3 of them. Then I set up 3 charges. I mass hypnosised 1 target, which was the shield captain on Mike, and charged him with 10 acolytes with 4 of the 3 damage saws.
Mhm.
Then I charged, I put a cross fire token on a unit of 3 bikes and charged a +1 attack acolyte unit into that group. Then I charged 10 50 attack Genestealers into another 3 bikes. Now, a few things to note. My army does not take, I had reroll 1s to hit and wound on some stuff. My army does not take penalties for the big saws. And I also had auto wounding on 6s to hit. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Math wise, I actually did the math, and I should have done a lot of damage to I should have done like 4 or 5 damage to the shield captain on bike, which would have been fine. I wasn't trying to kill him. I was trying to get him down low enough that I could deal with him. Because I wanted to get him low enough that I could maybe smite him on my next turn. That was my thought, even with the 4-up. Or shoot him, I guess. I had the Sanctus too, who could just like snipe him. Anyways. And then so I should have done like 5 damage there. I did 1. And then he killed the entire acolyte unit. And I was like, oh. And then the 10 Genestealers went, and they should have killed 2, and I had a bike already injured. They killed 1 bike. And then all of them died. And then the acolyte unit went, and it should have killed more than 2 bikes, and it killed 1 bike. Because Custodes can just roll hot.
Yeah. Well, I would say
there's too much spike, and when it's so few models, you end up, it's actually a little bit like Marvel, Chuck, where because there's so few models, the spikes are so more significant.
Yeah.
Because it's not that you lost, it's not like the math was you had 20 dudes and I could kill 7 or 11. It's that you have 3 dudes and I might kill 33% of the unit, or I might kill 66% of the unit.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that really screws with people, and something you can really learn to help take on Custodes is the variance is much wider with them than it is with anything else.
Yep.
So in that scenario where you went for 3 units, that's technically correct from the way we're used to playing the game, but they changed the game enough that probably what was the right thing to do was to go after 2 of those targets. I think my preference is for leaving the bike captain alone, but I don't think it actually matters. There's a lot of board state there to determine, but you have to
I couldn't have gotten the acolytes.
Kill.
The acolytes that charged him couldn't have gotten anything else. So
yeah.
So
they shouldn't have charged him. That was a bad decision.
I would also say that what we're talking about here is when the averages swing in the Custodes player's favor. Something that you need to remember when you're playing against Custodes is that they can just have a bad turn, and all of a sudden they have less stuff than they were planning on. It goes both ways. Those dice can go cold too. And so
I haven't seen it go both ways.
I have.
Well, I will tell you, the Custode players have.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where the key is to construct your army to force 3 and 4-ups. 2-ups are not a viable way to beat them unless you have Devil Gaunt volumes of shots, but even then that's not necessarily guaranteed. So you want to push them to their 4-ups. You want to force them to have as many chances to fail as possible. Stay in the game, keep trying to make it happen, keep sticking to the game plan. It can be, you can have one really bad turn where they're just around, and then the next turn it can totally reverse. And the thing is that a Custodes player cannot necessarily recover if certain pieces are just taken from the board. that they weren't anticipating. And that can happen. I saw it multiple times at LVO where I was like, man, this Custodes player has it in the bag. And then all of a sudden, they just rolled 4 1s. And those 4 1s completely changed the course of the game.
Right.
Because it really, your army is condensed, right? You've condensed everything you have into these particular places. With my list, I have basically 3 functional units. If one of those goes sad and disappears, or even gets weakened to a larger degree than I'm expecting, I have to change my plan. There's not a lot of trash to throw away. I can't. You got to be very careful. But I think as the Custodes player, you get accustomed to that. You see the space, you understand what those are, and so you understand that portion of the game better than your opponent does, and that's a big advantage.
Yep. Okay, Mitch, anything you want to add about Custodes before we move on? You're muted, I think.
Sorry, I've said so much, but I'll limit it to a few things.
Okay.
So first of all, Telemon are still great. They got cheaper, guys. You can have 3 Telemon for it's something ridiculous. 810 points. 810 points gets you 3 Telemon. That is an absurd amount of abuse that most people can't deal with unless they're a hammerhead. Like that's it. That's really what you're worried about. But otherwise, they're phenomenal. The change to the +1 attacks means that you always just take 1 fist and you can take their free gun or the 15-point gun. It's really up to you. That Venatari are being slept on right now. That's why it's in my background. Like,
but it's Venatari with spears, yeah.
I like both. I like both.
Okay.
Because when you give them the buckler, they now their hits explode on 6s, and there's a way to stack that so that you get 2 hits per 6. And they now have a 4-up invo with a 2-up armor save, so they act like a normal custodian in that way instead of that 3-up, which is what you have with the spear. That's why I'm not a huge. I mean, people are just relying on that 4-up at that point, but I feel like they can still get into cover. They there's no reason to not be sitting at a 1-up 4-up. If you can do it with a Misericordia, they're great. In combat, they're not the best, but they're fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Their shooting is effective. They have obsec, they have fly. They're a source of tanglefoot.
I love that Custode players look at the 3 strength 5 or 4 strength 5 AP2 attacks, and they're like, is that a
hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s?
I don't know if that's a close combat unit. That might not be enough.
Yeah. Well, and that's sort of what I'm getting at. And if you do like a 9-man, it's like 480 points or something, but it is so devastatingly effective. Like, gross. Yeah, they're and it's so fast. They're really interesting. The Custodes book has more depth than people think. It's a very toolbox heavy book on top of having all of the consistency of great stats.
We don't need depth, Mitch. We have bikes.
Yeah, this is true.
Well, what's funny about that, what Mitch is saying is that a lot of this happened with Drukhari when Drukhari came out, where all the Drukhari players were arguing over what the best stuff was, and it was everything. And AdMech had the same problem. This is actually one of the ways that you can tell if a book is too strong. If everybody's arguing and everyone's right about what's good, your book is too strong. Like
2/3 of AdMech was broken. 1/3 was very sad and not great.
But it was obvious, and it was just out of the conversation.
How many data sheets in the Custodes Codex are bad?
I would argue that there are almost none except for maybe the Contemptor Dreadnought.
Okay.
And the Land Raider is the other one.
Let me give you a partial list. Let me give you a partial list of the things in the GSC Codex that are bad.
Oh, there's so many.
No, we don't have time for that.
Yeah, no, let's not. Aberrants alone will make me sad.
Yeah, Aberrants, the Abominant.
I want my transhuman.
Both awful.
Yeah.
Ridge Runners are like as many points as an Orc Buggy. Like it's just not the same conversation.
Well, I think that we can expect Custodes points to bounce back up next update. I would not be surprised.
I would also like them not to have every one of the powerful stratagems in the game, but I mean,
they don't have Auspex scan.
I don't think the Auspex scan is actually that important.
I think it really is with R&D. It would really help Custodes.
You do not need it. I don't think you need it.
Oh, it's powerful. I would love to have it.
Well, okay, fine. They're just going to drop down behind a wall to do their R&D. Like, it's not like Auspex scan is pretty easy to play around. and you just want to get charged anyways, and you can just tanglefoot the thing charging you. Like it's just
Oh yeah, I'm not at all concerned about. I'm concerned about them landing and R&Ding, not about them
Yeah.
landing and charging me. That's never happening.
Right. So I think this is a great transition into me talking about GSC a little bit.
All right.
John Lennon, Tyler Bortel, Alex McDougall, and I will do a GSC Codex review if Mitch will allow us. It is his show. And we'll talk about what's best. Like we'll do that. And Mitch is going to put together a show to talk about Custodes. Like these are coming, but just I've played 5 games with GSC this week. No, 4 games with GSC this week. All mono. I had played some forces before where you have the Termagants and the Hive Guard propping up the GSC, and it's very hard to see what GSC is actually like. So I've been playing mono GSC, and they are neat. They have a number of cool tools. They're unit upgrades that make things jump out of the shadows and run like crazy and kill things. Like all that's super fun. The army itself is a close combat army. The shooting is not good enough to make a balanced army. I ran a bunch of games with 20-man units of neophytes that are ignoring all penalties to shoot their heavy weapons. 3 shots each, strength 6. 3 shots each, strength 6, AP 3, 2 damage, buff it to 3. That's 12 shots. You can give them rerolling once they hit and wound, and it just isn't good enough. The rest of that unit has shotguns and flamers. Guess what's awful right now?
In our game, the hardest thing about that unit for me was 20 obsec bodies.
Yeah.
Just like, how do I get rid of
by the
all
way,
of these? So
Hank did not have that problem in our game yesterday against Emperor's Chosen. There was no issue dealing with all those bodies.
All right.
So yeah, they just died. And then
probably Sagittarium, right?
The other problem with the neophytes is because they don't have a great way to fall back and shoot. The shield bikes that go 14, like eventually just touch them, and there's nothing you can do about it, and then you're in combat forever. The Custodes matchup and the Tau matchup, I've played both of them with GSC, and it's rough. I think that GSC is a very competitive army if you're willing to play against everybody else. Mm-hmm. But I personally think that into Tau and Custodes, it's a massive uphill battle. And my main issue is they keep making armies they keep making GSC into an army that doesn't have any durability, not just some durability. It doesn't have any durability. Everything is fragile. And so the problem is that in that Custodes example I gave, where I underperformed in 2 close combats, my army then died. Mm-hmm. When I was playing White Scars close combat, and that unit of Vanguard vets went in and did, by the way, very similar combat to what Genestealers do. When those Vanguard vets went in, I could count on the Vanguard vets not all exploding the minute they got punched back. But I can't count on that with GSC. And for me, that's really frustrating and makes it not very fun. I don't appreciate that I can have a bad turn of dice and lose 70% of my army. And that's what happens. Like, against Chuck, I went in with a unit of Acolytes into 4 or 5 Scorpic Destroyers. And I got them down to 1 wound. 2 of them came back. The whole Acolyte unit died. Yeah. Like, that's what GSC is.
So I have a question for you, Colin.
Yeah, okay.
So as obviously a Hive Mind and Eldari player, do you feel like GSC are kind of on the opposite side of the coin from what Dark Eldar was?
I think they're bad Drukhari. That's exactly what I was about to say. Is that what you're going to ask me?
Yeah, I was going to ask you if like they're just the other side of it. Like they're a MSU trading army that wants to trade up, but they don't quite have the points efficiency.
No.
And okay.
I agree. I agree with that. I'm saying no, they don't have the points efficiency.
So
I was agreeing with you.
Whereas Dark Eldar's problem was that they had too much points efficiency.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
So also the GSC has some outstanding ability to move, but it does not have consistent movability for everything. So your army doesn't shift and morph shapes.
Yep.
So once you commit to something, that's kind of what you're talking about, where I've committed to this, and if it goes wrong, everything over here dies.
Hank would really yell at me about this, but the reality is that as good as trucks are, Raiders were way better when they first came out.
Yeah.
That's the core issue here. And so you have to have a certain amount of durability in the game. And when Drukhari first came out, the durability we had was the court plus a whole bunch of Raiders, like 6 of them. And And those 6 raiders, because of the fact that we were running at you so fast, were very difficult for you to deal with. So you ended up not being able to take care of them, and they just kept shooting their dark lenses at you and charging things and holding things in combat and doing tremendous utility. The trucks don't do that, and you don't get to have 6 of them. So then when the meta got more killy and Drukhari's raiders went up in points, the Drukhari players all switched to Thick City, which is literally an army all about durability.
Yep.
And that's what it took for them to compete with Orc Buggies,
Well,
which
and they got a
also
points
was an
drop.
army all about durability, by the way. As powerful as Orc Buggies were, for me, it was the -1 to be hit, 5 up invul, all that BS, and they're great in combat. That was the real issue.
I get to do it to you twice because you don't impact me.
Right. So GSC need to go the same route. They need to get some sort of durability, and they just don't have any. And I find that impossibly frustrating to play. So I don't think I will be much of a mono GSC player. That said, I'm getting my mono GSC list all painted up, and we are going to do some bat reps with it, so it can look all pretty, and we can see what it's like. We'll probably just not play it into Custodes and Tau, unless Alex McDougall comes down and wants to play it more competently than me. But I know that Alex has beaten some of those guys, but he's also the way best player in his meta, so I don't know. I think GSC are a little bit meh out of the gate. They needed shooting so they can make a balanced list, because if they miss their charges, they just lose. And if they don't kill in close combat the way they need to, like, let me make one more example of what the issue is. In the double Kraken Stealer Swarmlord list that won for a long time, we're back in 8th edition. The way that army worked is that the Genestealers and the Hormagaunts were such an obnoxious problem of stealing objectives and wrapping things and killing stuff that you spent all your time dealing with them, while the shooting of the army, the Hive Guard and the Exocrine and whatever, while that shooting wrecked you. And you could never get to it because of how much stuff was messing with you. And it survived on the durability of mobility, which is a part of how Drukhari lives. Then the current Tyranid list that Alex took to LVO, the current forces list, again, here's all this GSC running at you while I have 60 Termagants and Hive Guard, which just takes up an incredible amount of space and does an incredible amount of damage. GSC doesn't have any long-range shooting like that. They have Ridge Runners. They're expensive, and frankly, that 1 to 6 damage is awful. I got 2 last cannon hits through on a bike unit yesterday, and they both rolled for 1 damage. Ridge Runners are bad. I'm sorry, they just are. They just are. Maybe the missile launchers on them is better, but they're just bad. So you end up with this situation where you have no long-range shooting, because you could do it in 24-inch shooting on neophytes, but you know what happens when people shoot back at neophytes or charge them? It's bad. So you don't get any reliable shooting throughout the game of any kind. And then you have all this fragile close combat that just dies. It's very hard to play. I'm sure there are lists out there we haven't seen yet that'll work great. I think GSC's real sauce is going to be souping with Tyranids when the new Tyranid book comes out. That's what I think the real sauce is. The pure strains and trucks, that feels great. Acolytes coming in from Deep Strike 3d6 charging, that feels great. But all of that stuff, if it doesn't go exactly the way you need it, you're losing that game. So, Chuck, can you remember the last time where I picked up a new army and went 1-3 in my first 4 games?
Is there?
I can't.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm bad. I am rusty. I'll acknowledge that. But my experience has been that GSC are good, and I think if I took them to a tournament as mono, I think I could beat Marines. I think I could beat Sisters. There's a bunch of, I don't know, new Sisters I guess are really good, but there's
I've heard
that rumor wise. I don't know data on that yet. Anyways, so yeah, I just think that it's not good enough, and I think that the idea that book was written in a similar period of time as Custodes and Tau demonstrates how little GW knows what they're doing, unless they wanted GSC to be bad compared to Tau and Custodes. I don't know if there's strategy to that made sense for their business. I don't know.
I don't think it's a decision.
No, I don't think so either.
I think
because they accidentally made GSC S tier in 8th edition. They did not they had no idea what John Lennon and Nick Nadavati would be doing with mono GSC. I don't think from the Codex. So anyways, that's my opinions on GSC. They're still best with forces, but we're losing what Tyranids are right now soon. So the whole Hive Guard behind all this GSC that's so good, you're not going to see that in
Yeah, I hope
literally
so.
like a month.
Yeah, I would like to take a Hive Guard break.
Right, yeah, and I
changed.
I don't know. I haven't seen the Codex, but from what I've heard from the rumor mill, Hive Guard are wildly different and not at all what we see them as today, which they should be. They should be completely different.
Yeah, I don't think
they're
that takes
very bad
much
for the game.
That doesn't take anything to know that's going to happen.
Right.
Like,
well, somebody asked about how everybody complained so much about indirect fire, and then GW removed it from the game effectively, and then Rucka Trucks brought it back, and I think that's a really good point. When 9th edition came out, they priced out of efficiency all indirect fire, Night Spinners, Thunder Fury cannons, Mana Core, like everything. Well, guard was just not good enough, but everything was like all the indirect fire that isn't Hive Guard went bad. And I thought that's because they acknowledged what I've believed for a long time, which is indirect fire is an inherently bad mechanic. It makes the game a lot less fun. It makes terrain matter a lot less, and it makes armies like GSC unable to function. All my stuff is T3 with a 5-up. Some of it has a 6-up invul. Most of it doesn't. Why are you shooting me, Tau? Why are you shooting me with so much AP1? Ignore cover, strength 5. Like, why? How is that happening? Also, you can put a marker light on them and then still get 3s, even though you can't see them. I don't like that. How are you? Like, I don't care for that at all. Anyways, so Tau has brought a crazy amount of indirect fire back. And I don't understand why that was a good idea at all. Like, Zach's list was not about indirect fire that I played into 2 days ago. And Zach's list had 40-something indirect fire shots each turn that it just had with the other things that it was doing. And I got to tell you, there's a lot of armies that just do not function against that much indirect fire, period. I don't like that. I don't think it's good for the game. But I'd be interested in your guys' take. Do you think indirect fire has a place? Are they just making it too efficient? What do you guys think?
I think it's too efficient.
Okay.
I think indirect fire should never be the gun you choose. Every time it's the gun you choose, it breaks things. But if you pick it because it's indirect fire, because you know you're going to need to be able to shoot somebody behind a thing, you don't want somebody to be able to hide somewhere, and you're specifically taking a gun that is less effective than your other guns because it does that, I think it's okay. Anything more than that, though, it immediately becomes spammed.
Yeah, the whole let's just take 9 Rucka Trucks really showed off. You made an indirect fire thing that's too inexpensive, right?
Yeah, when you take Rucka Trucks and your opponent's like, well, I'm all dreadnoughts, so I'm -1 damage, and you go, fine.
You'll still kill them. It's all right.
Yeah.
What do you think, Mitch? Because I know you love indirect fire.
I love indirect fire. I think that what you're talking about, where there's a reason to take it, that's what I'm doing with guard. It's not the most efficient option, but it adds a different dynamic to how the list plays. And I think that the don't come over here, but you can't go stay over there dynamic of putting Custodes in front of that indirect shooting is really interesting. I have another version that includes 3 Scorpius Disintegrators as well. So you have, at that point, you'll have 9 units with indirect fire.
But that's not the question. It's not whether you can make a good list with indirect fire.
Give me a second, guys, and I will get that going again.
What? What do you say?
He said something broke.
Oh, okay. I have a question. Thoughts on 10-man bladed cog aberrant bricks with 5++, 5+++? Unfortunately, if you make a comparison between aberrants for durability or for damage, basically, to anything else, they're bad. They don't do enough damage, and at 5++, 5+++ isn't good enough right now.
Well, so to me, an aberrant and a squad of grotesques are very similar, right? They're sort of moving at the same speed, doing the same kind of work.
Grotesques are so much better than aberrants.
Yeah, they're just so much more proficient.
Yeah. One of the issues with aberrants is that in order to do that, what he's talking about, you have to take a biophagus with a bunch of upgrades. So you're taking like a 100-point character to make that unit work.
So if that unit fails, that character dies with him.
And I think that's a 400-point unit he's describing. I think he's saying that he wants a 400-point unit with a 100-point character to buff it. Like, that's just not going to work. Unless that 400-point unit is 9 shield bros and custodes, it's not going to be durable. All right. So
I think it's interesting about.
I appreciate the thought, though. I appreciate someone trying to suggest something. Like, I don't want to. I don't want to just shut somebody down. Sorry. Go ahead.
I don't know.
Okay.
So
We were going to talk. Sorry, go ahead, Mitch.
oh well, yeah. Sorry guys, my headset died there.
Okay.
I had to get it charging. With indirect fire, there always has to be a push and pull for it. It has to have enough of a downside. And they've tried multiple ways of mitigating that. We remember the days of scattered dice and templates. We remember like there are a lot of ways that they try to do that. And I think the inherent, probably best way to do it is to make it a gun that's better when you shoot directly and worse when you shoot indirectly. So you have to have a compromise. So then that weapon can always be useful. So if the terrain doesn't suit, indirect fire, you're like, cool, this gun is good. But then when I'm shooting indirect fire, I am giving up AP. I'm -1 to hit or whatever that balance needs to be, so that you're exchanging the one advantage for a different advantage. And I think that that's a much more useful way to do it. I think that player place terrain makes it so much more important to have indirect fire, and it has a direct effect on the meta.
Player place terrain also makes it really more efficient to have indirect fire, because you can guarantee your castles.
Yep, that's the whole reason I'm looking at it in general, is that player place terrain is so fundamentally encourages indirect fire.
Okay.
Samuel Martin, Samuel says, I feel like we keep getting books that have excellent balance and books that do not. I think that the GSC book has relatively okay internal balance. I think there are some good options in there. I think the Custodes book has fantastic internal balance. I think that the Tau book has fantastic internal balance. Internal balance means, do I have lots of options here? Can I make a bunch of different lists?
There isn't one option that's clearly just better. Yeah.
Like Grey Knights, the Grey Knights book, I would say, Mitch, and you can correct me if you disagree, but I think the Grey Knights book has awful internal balance.
I would completely agree.
Yeah. So
I'm going to discuss slightly. The Grey Knights, a third of that book is still good.
Yep.
Right, but that's not good internal balance.
Right, but that's like 3 out of 9.
Oh, fair enough.
It's an extreme example because of the extreme nature of that army.
So the other kind of balance that we can so if that's what you mean, Samuel, then I completely agree with you 100%. But if you mean that we get some books that are balanced for the meta, I don't agree with that. I don't think that we haven't gotten a book that is like solidly great but not OP and not bad in a while. Like the Tau rules are crazy and the Custodes rules are crazy. When Zach came over to play Tau into me, he spent an hour explaining the rules to me, and my eyes were just rolling back into my head. I could not believe it. Like, I've played so much Eldar, and if you had ever given me 3 incredibly efficient shooting units inside of 3 Wave Serpents that can pregame move, and then for 1 CP, all 3 of them can move full movement. All 3 of their units can get out, move their full movement, advance if they want, and still shoot their guns at things. That's like 40 inches. You're in their deployment zone shooting whatever the hell you want. I can't believe that exists. Like, there's things like that when people tell you about it from the Tau book, you're just like, what? How? What? 1 CP? What? Like, it's craziness. That book is craziness. I'm not saying that it's going to ruin the game. I'm just saying that it's craziness. So thanks for that comment, Samuel. I think there's 2 different kinds of balance, and I think we're getting one type really good in some books and not the other type.
Well, I think in general, I'm very bad at the meta balance. I can't read a codex and say, oh, this is going to do well in the meta. But I can look at a book and determine if I feel like it's on point for the faction. Like, I could read through it and be like, oh, these rules are going to work this way, and this faction will feel correct.
Right.
And it has a good balance, a good data slates, a good balance of stratagems. Those things work together well. You're not too overburdened for your CP or not, that kind of stuff. Right. And every time I look at a codex that comes out, I'm excited. I don't get that same excitement necessarily from all of the extra releases. I don't know what they call them now, but the side books.
Yeah, I hate all of those.
But the codexes all seem like really well and thoughtfully made.
Yeah, I agree.
They just don't connect power level wise to each other.
Yeah.
And I don't always think points is the right way to fix that, which is rough because like FAQs and errata get really complicated.
One of the things I do like is that the Drukhari book, the AdMech book, GSC, Tau, and Custodes All 5 of those books have a lot of really great 1 CP stratagems. A lot. And as someone who played a lot of Guard, and Mitch is going to feel me here in the Guard PTSD, as someone who played Guard, where you have like 3 stratagems, like it feels really fun to play GSC and have like 10 CP and get 1 or 2 a turn and just be constantly churning through doing stuff. That's super fun. I like that they've done that. I wish the Custodes ones weren't quite so bonkers, but I still like the rate at which the armies are using CP to do things, because I think stratagems are a core part of how the game gets interesting. Without stratagems, I don't think 40K is a very interesting game. I don't think it's strategically very interesting without stratagems. So I think that's a big deal. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about the meta.
I feel that a lot from the Orc player's perspective, where I generally start with, 3 or 4 command points.
And all the good stratagems are 2?
That means 2 or 3 stratagems. Well, I mean, all the good stratagems are fight on death and interrupt. And so I'm going to do that 2 or 3 times this game, and there's no decisions there. It's not very great.
I like Kareen. Okay.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've used it a few times to get the truck out of my lines before it exploded.
That is, in fairness, similar to fight on death.
Yeah. I would strongly prefer it just made me, like, if they had a stratagem for just making it explode.
Okay.
Like, that would be great. But yeah.
All right. It's lightning round time. Here's how the lightning round works. We have received a bunch of questions on our Discord. If you want to participate, you need to come to our Discord. And the way that you do that is you go to patreon.com/bestintabletop. It is $10 a month, and you get into our Discord, and it's super active, and we do leagues, and we play Blood Bowl, and we play TTS, and we talk about 40K, and we talk about being better people, and look at pictures of cute pets, and we do all the things. And you can come there, and you can also ask us questions that we'll answer on the show. Okay. You know what? Before we go into this section, I'm going to take a moment to thank a sponsor. That's what I'm going to do. You guys have heard us talking about Outward Realms. You've heard about that. And when we talk about Outward Realms, we talk about it very affectionately. And that's not because Michael Timpey is one of the greatest humans to ever live, but he is.
It has a small effect on it.
Yes. He has made an excellent flipping game with beautiful models. The game plays great. It is easy to teach. It plays quickly. It has alternating activations, which is a thing that makes games just better strategically, in my opinion. And it is not the same as 40K. So it scratches a different itch. It is nowhere near as expensive as 40K to collect. You can buy a couple armies and play with your friend on a 4x4 table, and it is just a great game. You can learn more at outwardrealms.com. While you're there, if you want to buy anything from Outward Realms and you enter the code BITN, you will get a discount, and we will get a tiny taste to support our shows.
Cool.
So BITN, I believe, is the code, or at least knowing Michael, it will be as soon as we're done here.
He's setting it up right now.
Well, he set up the code like 2 weeks ago when we started all this, and it occurred to me that I might have written it down wrong from that conversation, and he's not here to tell me otherwise. So that's what it's going to be, BITN. And BITN is literally going to get you a discount on your Outward Realms. So thank you, Outward Realms, for supporting the network. It is a great game. Chuck and I's armies will be painted. Mine's supposed to be painted by the end of February, Chuck, just so you know.
Oh, mine will not be painted that quickly.
Okay. But we're going to start doing battle reps for Outward Realms real soon. So.
Yeah, I can use the other models in the meantime. They're very pretty.
Yeah. Okay, now back to Lightning Round. Here's how the Lightning Round works. You can ask us questions in the Discord. We will take the questions and we answer them quickly. The idea is that we do not spend a great deal of time thinking about the answers, and we burn through a whole bunch of questions.
That's the idea.
That's the idea. It's not always what happens. The questions can be about 40K. They can be about the network. They can be about movies, like whatever. It doesn't matter. So, first question. Who would win in an Anchorman style rumble between all the shows? Mitch.
I mean, I feel like we're supposed to say Fight Club because it's in the name and Anthony has a lot of experience. But I mean, then you got in is in there, and that's not Boss Baby's not intimidating.
No, and neither is Nathan. He looks like some sort of 40K
Nathan's
wizard.
gonna want to work it out. Like,
Nathan's just going to want to talk about your problems. Like, that's not.
Yeah, he'll try and address this in a healthy manner. So, yeah.
But then you've got like Naj is not very big, and I don't think he's deadly. And then Tyler and Lucas are both like, they're not scary either. And I feel like Chuck and I are just not useful. So
yeah.
I know you've got all types of chronic pain, Mitch. I don't think any of us are good. I think it's got to be Fight Club.
Yeah. I'm like, what I'm hearing is basically the question is, do I think Anthony Vanilla can kick my ass? And the answer to that question is probably yes.
Oh, yeah. Does he have enough energy?
Yeah. Does he
to kill all of our asses in a row, or does he get tired at some point? It's really the big question.
Or does one of us fall on him?
But that's because we're assuming we're assuming the terrain here. Let's set the terrain up in our favor. I don't want to start anywhere near him.
Fair.
And I want time to plan and consider.
Podcasts, yeah.
And then I think maybe I have a chance.
Gotcha. Get him worn out a bit.
And then I want a pre-game movement after.
If I can catch him while he's asleep, and I have something heavy, I have a decent chance.
Yeah, as long as I've got Rag and Ether, I'm great. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
So Lucas wants to know why orcs are the best. And I inherently disagree with the question, but I think Chuck will answer.
Well, because they always win. They either fight and they win, or they fight and they lose and they come back, or they had a good scrap. Like they have 100% win rate.
They have figured out how to be content.
Yeah.
And as human beings, we cannot understand that.
They're happy. In the 40K universe, they're happy all the time.
And they're it. That's the only people who are happy.
They're clearly winning.
Yeah.
Constantly.
All right. Alex from Australia would like to know who we would nominate as the 2 champions of the network to enter a tag team style match versus other podcast networks. And it's clearly Anthony.
Yeah.
But I don't know who we put with him.
Somebody get some coffee?
I mean, if we're talking about like tag team for 40K.
No.
Oh.
If these questions are going to keep coming up, we're going to need to get more like professional fighters on our roster.
I don't understand. Like, yeah.
Okay.
So much physical confrontation.
Mitch.
Yep.
What was your first 40K army and why did you decide to play that faction?
First 40K army was Space Marines, and it was because the Land Raider kit had just come out, and even though I couldn't afford it, I just thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, it was just like every time I look at a Godhammer Land Raider, there's like, oh man, that's so cool. Like I can't help it. It's just that part of my childhood, that nostalgia that it touched on, and so that was why. And after that, I was like, oh, these guys are boring. Oh, there's a Viking version. Let's do that.
Chuck?
Space Wolves. They had just received the first busted Codex of all time. They had models that had the most attacks. They had models that had the most shooting. They had everything. And I just was like, oh, they've the most busted thing has ever arrived. I will purchase that. Thank you. They later grew spikes and tails and tentacles and were much improved.
So my first army, I ended up with Space Marines from buying the box set. And so I was going to play Space Marines, and this guy Ian took my orcs and traded me more Space Marines for it. But why I picked Dark Angels, I have literally no idea. I don't remember. Oh, I do remember. No, I know exactly why I picked Dark Angels. I wanted Ravenwing. I wanted bikes and land speeders. I remember this very clearly. And I made a list that was bikes and land speeders in second edition, where everything was like in my opponent's deployment zone, shooting them on the first turn with like penalties to be shot back at. I loved it. And then I immediately picked guard because I love the tanks. I wanted all the little dudes running around with all the tanks driving around. I wanted the giant artillery guns. I wanted the basilisks. I have one. What's the Mitch? What's that one I have still that doesn't exist anymore? That's got
Griffin
the little
mortar carrier.
Yeah, the Griffin. I have the Griffin. I use it as a proxy for other tanks sometimes. Chuck painted it up 20 years ago. Anyways, that's our answers. Let's see here. How important is it to play non-standard tournaments, doubles, teams, custom mission tournaments, etc.? Mitch?
They're palate cleansers is how I view them.
Okay.
I obviously like the team format is very appealing and stuff, but there's just a lot more logistically going on there. You're only going to do so many team tournaments. just because it's that hard to get that many adults to continually do that. But doing a different format, doing something that allows you to let go of whatever preconceptions you have about the game at the moment and try and view it from a different perspective is always a healthy thing to do. But that you have to recognize that that's what you're doing. Don't bring the same mentality to this other style of play necessarily. Like, view it as a chance to try and see what the differences are and how the game works differently at the scale, whether it's smaller points, doubles, like where you each have 1,000 points and you can put factions together you can't normally. That's a whole different, type of challenge. Focus on that. Focus on the differences. Don't try and make it feel the same.
Right. Chuck?
Mitch already said most of it.
Yep, I agree.
Except for the big team tournaments.
Yes.
The big team tournaments aren't a palate cleanser for me.
Right.
No,
it's
it's
the social of a regular tournament amped way up in a really fun and interesting way. I think that's different. But I love, I used to go to, pre-COVID, go to 2-man tournaments all the time where you could mix armies in weird ways, right? But stuff like that was fun. But
I just bought ATC tickets. Team tournament. That's my answer. Team tournament. Okay, next question. What's an army that was considered not good at the time, but you found success or enjoyment anyways? I guess Mitch will have the best answer here, so let's have Chuck go first.
Oh man, I do not. My brain doesn't function this way.
I've got one.
What?
Remember when when John, I think John created that triple vulture with Swarm Lord Steelers.
I hated that thing so much.
And nobody was talking about vultures. And Tyranids had fallen way out of the meta. And I took that to a GT, and everyone's like, this looks like it's terrible. I'm like, no. And then I won the GT with it. That was fantastically fun. Also, when John and I both won our GTs with Ultramarines, Ultramarines were considered the worst Space Marine faction at that time. Just so everybody remembers that. Because sometimes the internet is wrong. Anybody else got a good answer for that question?
I'm going to jump on the hipster version of it. I was doing Brimstones and Smite before it was cool. I just wasn't doing it correctly.
Yeah.
There was many people who came after that and made it far more functional. But I think that was fun and interesting, but not for my opponent. So it's not that great.
Mitch, you've had lots of these. What's
so a favorite moment, it obviously became everyone realized how good it was very quickly, but playing the Castellan at the first tournament, it was legal. And playing guard and stuff with it. And in that Boise Cup, I met Michael Timpe and played him for the first time. And I got to explain to Brandon Grant why the Castellan was just better than the Shadow Sword he brought. He won that tournament because I hit Custodes and they rolled 4s. But that was always a fun one. Because after you look at it now and it's like, oh yeah, it's obvious how great it was. But we actually had to go and do the math back then because it just was like, wait, what? You can reroll what? And then the other one that was definitely the 7th edition Space Wolves all drop pod list against modern Yunari. It wasn't a super bad list, but it wasn't what people were playing. You didn't see other people.
Definitely out from left field.
Yeah, you didn't see people show up and be like, okay, here's my army. It'll stay on my tray until after your first turn is done. So it was just very different. And it taught me a lot about board control and that I didn't have to kill everything to win. Which I still tried to because Space Wolves, but you didn't have to, and that was a really important lesson for me.
It's actually really similar to the Goth Rush list that everybody's playing right now, right? It's I'm going to make you stay in your deployment zone for 3 or 4 turns, and then you kill me, and you just don't have time. It's the same sort of idea, right? We're just going to use up all your time.
Yep, I'm going to wall this objective off with drop pods, and there's a bunch of angry guys behind them that you can't shoot, so enjoy that.
All right. As your goals are shifting, how are you adjusting your mindset to match? And I'm going to start this one because I've got this is very relevant to me right now. I'm rusty at 40K. I took 3 months off. And the reason I took 3 months off is a bunch of personal stuff. But one of the reasons is that the armies that have been S tier have not been things I wanted to play. And for most of my 40K experience, I have meta jumped from S tier to S tier to S tier, and that's part of how I've won so much. I'm a very competent player. I'm not the best player, but I'm very good at learning lists, and I'm very. I would say that my skill set is particularly adept at picking up an army that I haven't played before. So now, though, I still don't want to play what's S tier, and I'm going to a GT in maybe the most imbalanced meta of the past several years. And so I'm trying to figure out what that looks like for me. How do I go and just have fun? Like, I like playing with people and I want to see everyone. How do I do that? What do I take? What sort of list should I take? So I'm spending a lot of time on that right now, and we're going to talk about that a bunch next episode as I try to figure out how to make that work for me. Because I'm sure Eldar will be good, but for the last long time, I didn't want to play Orc Buggies. I don't want to play Custodes. I didn't want to play Grey Knights. Like, the things that have been good, I've just not wanted to play. I had no interest in Thick City. Thick City just didn't interest me even a little bit. So I just haven't wanted to play the things that are really good, and I haven't been excited about trying to struggle bus through a faction that's not good. Do you guys want to add anything to that from your points of view?
Chuck?
I don't have enough time in my life to keep up with 40K to the degree that I'm accustomed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When I play Tau at the tournament next weekend, I hope I get to play Tau, otherwise I'm doing pretty horribly. That will be my first experience with it. And I don't just mean like my first game against them. I will have not read their book. I will have heard what some other people said they do. And that makes me like, I'm bringing an S tier army, and I'm setting my expectations to trying to get a winning record. I don't feel super competitive right now, and I just don't have the space in my life to get there. So expectation setting is actually very easy in a way, because I don't like go have fun, talk to the people that you miss seeing all the time, try to get a winning record, and come home with a fully painted army is I guess the goal leading up to that.
Yeah.
Keep it real simple.
Sorry about Chuck. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, that's fine. I was just saying, just keep it real simple, keep it real light, because I don't expect much else.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's kind of transitioning. I've had like these several distinct periods of how I was interacting with 40K that have been dictated by things beyond my control in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I have some control again. I find myself asking, like, what do I care about? What do I want to get out of it? Not necessarily how good am I, or am I going to prove myself? Well, like, I'm not even thinking about those things anymore. It's now much more focused on, what is my time and money getting out of it for me, and how am I contributing back to the community that we have that I really enjoy? And those are the questions that I'm finding are much more important to me. So going to an event is definitely a much more community oriented exercise. I'm like, winning, whatever. Like, I don't have the time to chase best in faction right now. So I think people like, so then it's like, okay, how many do I care about my record? Do I care that I had a great game with every single person? Like, those are all becoming much more important questions. And I think that's just it's acknowledging where my life is at the moment, and that, as competitive as I might feel or want to be, that's not where I can go. And I need to focus on the positives I can get out of this hobby, as opposed to fixating on something that maybe I can't control.
Yeah, that's fair. That's totally fair. I would add that I care 5 times as much about best in tabletop succeeding as I do about winning a 40K tournament. And when I started, I cared only about winning 40K tournaments. The content that we're making for the community and the impact we're making on the community and the good people vibe we put out is more important to me than being good at 40K. So if my skills is dilapidate the right word? That's not the right word, right? Not even depreciate. I don't know what word I'm looking for, but if my skills
deteriorate,
yeah. And what's it called when you're in bed for a long time and your muscles atrophy? That's the word I was looking for. If my skills atrophy a bit because I'm not getting to play as much, okay, all right, I accept that. if that means I don't get to be the best player in Washington this anymore, if I've passed that, like I'm already not winning as much as everybody else because I haven't been going to tournaments. So I already have lost in my mind the title of best player in the Northwest. Am I okay with that? I am, because Best in Tabletop is really exciting. So that's what I would say about that. It's a shift in focus.
I think a really good summary of kind of what we're talking about here is you need to be able to name your fun in this. You know, if you can't name why you're doing it and why you're having fun and how you're having fun, then you might be operating on some assumptions that or a mode that maybe suited you earlier in your 40, you know, when playing 40K, and now changes in your life have made it that not necessarily possible. And recognizing and accepting those changes of how you engage with this hobby is really important for having fun with it. We have all spent a lot of time and money and effort to be where we are in the community, and to care about it this much, and to have these people to talk to. So don't let the fact that maybe some specific things of how you view the game start to poison that, because you're not being conscious of knowing what your fun is.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, let's continue on. What is the thing you're most excited about in the expansion to Best in Tabletop? Anybody have one?
I have more than one. Yeah.
I would say the thing that I've noted a lot recently, I can't keep up with all the content I want to. I'm already spoiled for choice, so there's more coming. That is the thing that's exciting for me. It used to be like I'm pretty picky about what I listen to as far as a podcast goes. And if I go up to Collins, you're an hour and a half away or so, sometimes I just run out of content and I don't get to listen to a podcast on the way up and on the way back down. And that just isn't real anymore. There's
nope.
So that's what I'm most happy about is actually just, I think the volume, the quantity of good content.
Mitch?
I'm excited about a lot of the upcoming shows. I'm excited about the phases and everything coming up. I think I'm most excited about the actual tournament and Charity Hammer, and how that's going to morph and become something bigger and grow in a whole new way, just because obviously there's a lot of different things surrounding it now, and so its context changes. And I'm really excited to see where that goes.
Currently, it seems like almost the entire Best in Tabletop network will be at Charity Hammer, including Ennis.
Oh, amazing! That's amazing.
That's kind of the vibe we're getting, and Camilleri is going to try to be here. Like it's, we may have the network come early and just make up content for a day. So there's a lot happening there. It's pretty exciting. Okay, there's a question for me. What CW unit, which Craft World unit should I throw my hobby time into over the next month? I don't actually know, but I will tell you that I am making sure that I have Swooping Hawks and Howling Banshees.
Yeah, those Banshee previews are pretty spicy.
Swooping Hawks. Swooping Hawks battle focus ability. So the battle focus is the move that Eldar get to do after they shoot you. Their battle focus ability is that they just redeploy to anywhere on the table 9 inches from an enemy.
Huh.
So they move 14. They shoot 24 or 18 or something. They shoot a mass volume of strength 4 shooting. And then you just teleport them to safety or to screen somewhere or to hold an objective or whatever you feel like doing.
So here's the thing, and this sounds like I wasn't aware of this stuff, so that's interesting. This has always been true for Swooping Hawks. They have a great horde killing power. And when you don't need the horde killing power, your opponent's army is an elite army. And then they can use their movement to be a scoring unit. So
and
they don't always find the same use.
So many different uses.
But
they don't find the same use in every game, but they always find premium use in every game, which is, they've always been that way. They're like the secret stars for edition after edition.
And while they're only strength 4, and I think they're 4 shots each at strength 4, no AP, the leader has AP and a little bit better gun, but the majority of them are strength 4, 4 shot, no AP. They do auto wound on 6s, and I do think auto wounding on 6s helps the math a lot. So, against everything, by the way, vehicles, everything. Yeah. So, pretty neat. Anyways,
Harlequins look nuts.
I don't think you're going to run 30 Swooping Hawks, but I won't be surprised if you're running 10 or 15.
I would say most lists that we see these days don't spam out units like they used to.
No.
Right.
it's a lot of synergies in working with different pieces. So I would paint a unit of each thing.
Yeah.
And if you need a second one, then you only have one unit to paint.
That's true. And basically, aspect warriors in general are going to be good, is what it sounds like.
Yeah,
it does
that's
seem
my
that.
guess.
Well, and I don't see any infantry, if they all get battle focus, I don't see any of you regretting having anything like
Sure.
like some of any of them. Oh no,
Just for the sheer amount of movement, this is good.
Yeah.
Ben would like to know what are 1 or 2 40k skills I can practice on my own to improve competitive play. That is literally a question we've been asked a lot. I strongly suggest you go Google the Art of War Down Under episode that Mitch and I are on talking about practice. That is a fantastic episode where we talk about all of this, but just to hit them really quick, TTS, watch battle reports, read your codex, talk to people online about how armies work. Talk to people and ask questions. How does that work? Why is that good into this? Why is that good into that? Practice deploying your army on the table. Play against yourself.
I would add understand variance in statistics and odds. It's really important that you like to be able to be like, oh, that was only 1 or 2 variant like of a variance off, like because
better than average for sure.
Yeah, like you can understand that, and you can very quickly know when a combat's not going your way or it is, just because you're like, oh, I rolled above average in that combat. That's probably probably don't need to commit what I was going to there. Let's commit it over here. The other thing I would say is cut out 19-inch cardboard circles and practice with them for learning how to zone out a board. You make about 20 of them, and because that will help you understand much better how to stop swooping hawks from showing up places and how to actually block things out. It's a huge visual cue that if you just take and you put on a table, you can realize very quickly, oh no, I can block off 60% of the board as long as I'm just being aware and consciously doing it.
Yeah, screening your side of the table takes about 3 units.
Yep.
Once you understand it.
We have a lightning round question from somebody's mom up next.
Nice.
What is your favorite item to eat or drink at a party?
I don't remember.
This is hard because I was going to say Cheetos, but I don't like my hands getting messy at a party.
I think any kind of meat cheese cracker board is probably my
charcuterie.
My go-to.
Charcuterie.
No, I said meat cheese cracker board. No, it's just not that fancy.
Okay. Mitch?
A good cocktail is always nice, but I mean, I'm pretty easy. I just like to hang out with people and have good conversation, beer, whatever. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was a fun episode, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Good
here's what's
lightning
going to happen. 2 weeks from next week, Chuck and maybe me are going to a GT. We're going to try to get somebody from that GT on to talk about their games as well. Whoever does really well and has something interesting to talk about. Maybe Tal, if Zach's going, and he's taking a Tal list that I adore. And I didn't talk about my game with Zach on the off chance that that's the exact list he's taking. It just seemed unfair.
Mm-hmm.
I also didn't talk about Chuck's Custodes list. So, like,
well, my list is different now anyway.
Yeah. I just want to be respectful, right?
Yeah.
So next week GT, following week GT coverage. This week for the network, Fight Club Tuesday night. Releasing the first episode of Chasing the Narrative probably on Tuesday, and then Biff Pod TNG Saturday morning, I think. I guess I don't know that. And Anthony will have his first stream game, Friday night stream game on Friday as well. So just a lot. If you want to know everything that's happening, just go subscribe to our YouTube, because I'm putting all the podcasts up on the literally on the calendar. Mm-hmm. So like it'll tell you when the shows are recording. So that's what's going on. And we appreciate all of you.
Do they need to click that bell to get the notifications? On YouTube?
Is it a bell?
Is that how you YouTubes?
Yeah, I watch enough YouTube. I feel like it's subscribe and click the bell is what we're supposed to
and comment and like
now
or dislike. Just interact with every button you can see on the page. Every interaction helps us get more attention.
And the refresh button, that'll screw you up too. Avoid those, but everything else is fair game.
And then just like if you have multiple accounts, get in there.
Yeah, that's right. Do it. So to wrap us all up for the week, I want to thank you guys all for listening and your continued support of Best in Tabletop. The patron group is growing quickly. We really do appreciate your guys' support. We wouldn't be doing any of this if we didn't have such an amazing listener base.
Absolutely.
And I will leave you with these words. If you light up the stage, we will rock the mic like a vandal, as we just have. So with that, we will talk to you guys in 2 weeks. Bye now.
See ya.
See you later.